going to get into ministering to Hindus. All right, with our dear brother, it's Pastor Reefath Kumar, whose last name I always have to look up. So I'm sorry, dear brother, but come on up. Everybody, please welcome Pastor Reefath.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you all. And I just want to thank God and thank Reverend Nate and his team for giving me the opportunity to share about Hinduism and how to share gospel, how to reach Hindus with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We'll look into some of the important things about Hinduism. Okay, then what is Hinduism? Where did this word come from? Okay, just a couple of minutes, I'll go into, I'll just read a few things for your understanding about what actually Hindu means and how it became a religion. So the word Hindu is derived from the Sanskrit word Sindhu, the ancient name for the Indus River. Ancient Persians pronounced S as H, changing from Sindhu to Hindu. Originally, Hindu referred to the area and people living beyond the river Indus. So the people in Persia, they would call the people and the region beyond that river as Hindu, because for Persians, pronouncing S is very difficult. I think you understand, you know that. So by the first millennium BCE, the Indian subcontinent was home to a wide variety of religious and philosophical traditions. Over time, devotional traditions centered on Jainism and later Buddhism and Vaishnavism, worship of Shiva, Shaivism, and Shaktism, the worship of our mother, divine mother, developed into major religions in India. Many local and regional traditions also flourished, each with its own deities, rituals, and cultural practices. These traditions often competed for followers, royal patronage, and religious influence through philosophical debates, political support, and at times, regional conflicts. Scholars continue to debate the exact historical relations among these traditions, because they developed over many centuries and frequently influenced one another. We see Nirvana, Maya, Brahman, all other concepts in all these traditions. In Buddhism, in Jainism, in Shaivism, and Vaishnavism, and Shaktism, the mother, divine mother. So rather than originating from a single founder or religion, Hinduism gradually evolved as a diverse and dynamic religious traditions influenced by many schools of thought. It was in the 8th century AD, Shankaracharya is traditionally credited with organizing these three traditions through a system called a sixfold worship system. It was in 8th century AD. These different forms of worship were understood as paths toward the same ultimate reality. So all roads, all beliefs, all religions lead to the same destination. Began in the 8th century among the Indian religions. So from which religion or which tradition this idea originated is still debatable. Okay, because as I said, there were many, India is a home to many religions and many religious traditions and schools of thought. So this Shankaracharya, 8th century AD, okay, and it might surprise you, it was during the Mughals, the 16th century AD, the term Hindu came to describe the religious and cultural traditions practiced on the Indian subcontinent, which was different from Islam, Jain, Parsi. Islam and Jain and Parsi. Parsi is nothing but Persian, okay? In India, we call them as Parsis. Persians are called Parsis. So good number of Persians also lived in India. So it was during the Mughals, just for identity's sake, the non-Jains, non-Buddhists, and non-Parsis and non-Islam, the non-Muslims, were called Hindus in the 16th century AD. Okay, let me go quickly into their basic beliefs. As I said, over the period, the Vaishnavism, the religion of the Brahmins, took over and reigned supreme over all the rest of the religions in India. So what is projected outside as Hinduism is nothing but Brahmanism or Vaishnavism. Brahmins' god is Vishnu. Okay? Their god is Vishnu. So what is projected out to the outside world as Hinduism is nothing but the religion of the Brahmins who reigned supreme over a period of time over the rest of the other religions in India. So there is no Hinduism. Even our Prime Minister Modi, who came to power saying that Hinduism is in danger and we need to protect Hindus from, the invading Islam and Christianity, he also admitted that Hindu is not a religion. And the so-called protectors of Hinduism, the main groups called RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevaks, and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, all these groups, they openly said that we are the protectors of Hinduism, the Hindu culture. But their chief recently admitted that Hindu is not a religion at all. It was a name given by the Persians to the people living beyond the river Sindhu. So now they are planning to declare India as the Hindu Rashtra. What for? Again, it is for supremacy only. The Brahmin supremacy only. Nothing to do with religion. It is a political ideology. The Hindu worldview. Hinduism generally views existence as a cyclical rather than linear. The universe goes through repeated cycles of creation, preservation, destruction, and recreation. Human existence also follows a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The present life is therefore understood as one part of a much larger journey. The ultimate goal is to become free from this continuing cycle, birth and death and birth and death. The core concepts of the Hinduism. Brahman, the ultimate reality underlying existence. The supreme authority or the supreme reality, they cannot address that supreme reality as a he or she or it. Okay? They view God more as an energy, power, not a personal God. Okay, so Brahman is the ultimate reality underlying the existence, the whole existence. They believe the whole of creation came out from one big balloon kind of an egg, and everything came out and everything again goes back into it after death. So, universe and God cannot be separate. For them, universe and God cannot be separate. Everything is one. And they believe in Atma. The inner self, soul, the physical body is temporary. Or even they say the physical body is Maya, illusion. While Atman continues beyond death. They believe in samsara. Samsara is the continuing cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And they also believe in karma. Actions have consequences that influence one's present and future existence. Karma is not the immediate consequence of our deeds in this life, but karma also decides what you will become, what you will be born as in your next life. Karma doesn't only relate to the consequences of our actions in this world, but our karma, our deeds also will decide what we are going to be born as in our future life, the next life. And they believe in reincarnation. After death, the individual is reborn with karma influencing the circumstances of the next life. They believe in Swarga and Naraka. Swarga is heaven, Naraka is hell. heavenly, hellish realms generally understood as temporary rather than the final destination. Swarga, heaven is a temporary for them. Moksha is a final destination. There's another concept called moksha. That means liberation from the cycle of life and death and life and death. Okay? Liberation from the cycle of life and death and rebirth and life and death and rebirth, life and death and rebirth. So that liberation is called moksha. And how to? In this life, they have some four important concepts again. Dharma, which is called one's duty based on his place in the social order. You know, there is a concept of what you call this, the social hierarchy in Hinduism, like caste system. Brahmin came from the head or the top of the supreme being, and the Kshatriyas, the warriors class, they came from the shoulders of that supreme being, and the traders or the merchant community, they came from the belly or the hip area of that supreme reality, and the Shudras came from the legs of that supreme reality. So this order has to be there, and that has been there, and it is still there. The priestly class, the ruling class, the business class, and the servant class, the Shudras. So if a Shudra can never become a priest. A Shudra can never become the warrior, or vice versa. A Brahmin cannot become a Shudra. A Kshatriya cannot become a Shudra. So their belief is this order has to be there in society. They believe that world is in a perfect order. The world is going on in a perfect order. If Brahmin becomes a Shudra or does the work of a Shudra, or the Shudra does the work or service work of the Brahmin, the priestly work of the Brahmin, then the order got disturbed, and God will take incarnation to reset that order. Why does God come? That's the difference between the Christian incarnation and the incarnation in Hinduism. In Hinduism, God takes incarnation to reset that disturbed order. The priestly class, the warrior class, the business class, and the servant class. You are born because of your previous life's deeds. You are born as a Brahmin because of your previous life. You are born as a Kshatriya because of whatever good deeds or bad deeds of your previous life. You know, in that way. To attain this liberation from the cycle of life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth, they brought in four principles called the karma marga. Karma is selfless actions. Bhakti marga, devotional life. Gnana marga, spiritual knowledge. Through spiritual knowledge, you can get liberated from that cycle of birth, life, death, and life, birth again. And the yoga, the meditative path. I think the Eastern philosophies invaded the West with all some different disguises. Like yoga is good for your health. But actually yoga is one of the ways to liberation from the cycle of life and death. These are the main concepts of God, and the four social levels or the social order, the hierarchy, and the four ways to get liberation from the cycle of life and death. I'm done. Thank you so much. Over to my son.
Thanks, Papa, for, I guess, I'll try to portray down how to share the gospel more now that you got the foundation or the overview of what Hinduism looks like. So, as my dad talked about karma, so we're living now, but we die. And once again, their belief is we come back to life and we die again. But the question you would have to ask or push them is, how does someone know that? Who came to, reveal this idea? Someone outside of life and death has to have, communicated with humanity to show, hey, this is what actually the life circle is. So push them on that. And next question for them would be, I see Christianity and Hinduism as worldviews. So Christian worldview, we got a personal God, a relational God. Unlike Hinduism, like my dad said, it's just an egg, impersonal being. So how come an impersonal being is trying to communicate this idea? How does that work? Can an impersonal object communicate? No. Can impersonal anything communicate? No. It's just personal beings that communicate. So how does this transcendent, the highest of gods, what is an impersonal being, is communicating? So you got to push them on that. And next is Christianity. Unlike Hinduism, Christianity, we got a personal God. How do we know that? Through revelation, through Jesus Christ. So I would, every time I share the gospel, you want to focus on, how does someone know this? Can I verify this? Show me outside, just push them on this idea. How does someone know that? Someone outside has to have, outside of this perspective has to have communicated. But you say the highest of gods is an impersonal being. So how does it work? So because they believe Christianity can be one of the religions. Now the question is, can God be a personal being and an impersonal being? Ask them that. Can an object be blue color and not blue color? That breaks the second law of logic, law of non-contradiction. God cannot be both personal and impersonal. Push them on that. So either one of them is true. And because we just proved that this worldview does not make sense, and we as human beings have love, why do we got love? Why can we love? Because the Creator himself is an all-loving being, a triune being, eternally existing as three persons. So this is how I would share, and you all know the basic routine. It's like God came down to earth to die for us, so you and I can be eternally with him and be made right in righteousness. So yeah, I would focus more every time I share the gospel. You can focus on, how does someone know this? How can an impersonal being give birth or create? Because, for creation, there was a point when there was nothing, and then there was a point where there was something. For our God, God thinks. God is a personal being. He was like, hey, let us create man. And, he created man. But how does an impersonal being make a decision? Does that make sense? So yeah, that's how I would, share the gospel, and everything else, the basics. So yeah, thank you.